Hi, everyone, and good evening. Welcome to the Constellation Crew, a program from here at Ball State University. I'm Dana Thompson, the director of the Brown Planetarium here at Ball State, and I'm joined tonight with 3 students here on camera, as well as 1 in the chat to help you out there. So on camera here, we have Caleb, Nicolette, and Greg, and then in the chat, we have Melanie. And if you want to interact in the chat with Melanie, I'm sure she would really appreciate it, especially tonight. All right, so we have been looking at constellations during our Constellation Crew series. We've explored so many, and tonight we're going to explore the Lion constellation, one of them anyway. That's Leo the Lion. And it's shown here in the sky, and we're going to teach you how to find it and explore some interesting things in Leo, like galaxies, exoplanets, and more. But before we jump into that, I have a mystery image for the crew. The crew probably hasn't seen this one before. They might have seen it out on the internet somewhere, but maybe they haven't. All right, so crew, here's the mystery image. And it's maybe a little obvious to some people what's going on here, but what do you think is going on here, crew? And if you have an idea of what this is and you want to put it in the chat, your answer, go ahead and do that. So looking at this,
question, is this a real image?
This is a real image.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there's more than
To me, it looks
one
like-
image, which is why I kind of was like pausing there. I was like, there's more than one image here. More than one.
To me, it looks
image.
like. To me, it looks like you have the image of the same. Several images of the exact same
Yeah.
view, just
Yep.
different times. you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, that's what it is. So it's the exact same image, different views, at the same time. Yeah.
Oh, that explains it. Okay. Because it
Yeah,
didn't
because
look
you can see like
photo to
part of
me.
it's nighttime, part of it's
Yeah.
daytime, part of it's with birds there, sometimes with no birds.
Interesting. Okay.
And Melanie let us know that there's a little bit of an echo. Maybe it's better now. Melanie, you can let us know if it is. Or if we're still having issues, let us know too. All right, so yeah, you can see the birds. Looks like we're good. You can see the birds there that are kind of seemingly lined up. I don't know how they, maybe like if this is one image of the sky at a different time, and this is another one over here, they must have gotten the same kind of trails to line up between the two.
Oh, I didn't even notice that.
Yeah. I was wondering, I was like, is this real? This is from Alex on Instagram. And it's called, what is it called? 20 Skies. So it is a picture, multiple pictures of the sky, same part of the sky, different times of the year, different times of the month. And you can see that there's some warm sunsets and some cooler sunsets. There's the moon here too, that's in between 2 images. What phase is that in, crew, do you know?
Looks like to me like a waxing crescent.
Ooh, there's a way to remind yourself. Light on the right, it's getting bright. Light on the right, it's getting bright. And when it's getting brighter over time, it's waxing. And the light is not on the right-hand side of that one. It's on the left-hand side. That means it's not waxing, but waning, yep. So it's a waning crescent. But yeah, it's. I think it's really cool. It kind of looks like, what's it called? Stained glass?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Or it reminds me of that fun little tarp, if anyone in elementary school got to play with that, where the gym teacher would make you go up and then go underneath and then sit underneath.
Yeah,
That's
I
really
loved that. We had that when I was growing up. It was one of my favorite things. Because it was almost like being in one of the sky labs, like the planetariums that they would bring and blow up, the portable ones. And I always liked that.
Inside of a kaleidoscope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's cool. I didn't know that. Wow.
Really cool. All right, so we are going to explore Leo, like I mentioned, and first we got to figure out how to find it in the sky. So I'm going to switch over to a program that is free to use. Maybe Melanie can put a link to it in the chat for you all, but it's called Stellarium. And Stellarium lets you explore the sky any time of day, any time of night, from anywhere on Earth, just like our planetarium does. But we can actually bring this to you even though our planetarium is still closed due to COVID to the public. So you might notice some things here in the simulation that we do have a horizon where our sky meets the ground. We have letters on the horizon here, an SW for southwest, an S for south, and so on. And we're seeing more of the sky than what you can see with your eyes, because we're seeing, you know, kind of, I'm not sure if it's actually showing on your sky, but we, on our screen, excuse me, we have an E all the way to the left of our screen here. And then all the way over on this side, which you can see, we have a W for west. So we're seeing a lot more of the sky here, again, than what you would see if you were to go outside. But the shapes are still the same. And if you are really good and you've been watching a lot of Constellation Crew programs, you could probably already spot Orion the Hunter in our simulation here. Orion. So right above the southwestern horizon, close to the horizon after sunset, is Orion here. And above Orion is this reddish star-looking object, but that's not a star. Crew, what is this right here?
Mars.
It is Mars, yeah. So Mars is in the constellation of Taurus the Bull, which is hiding behind our cameras, our videos here. Mars has been in the news a lot recently because a rover landed on Mars called Perseverance. So the Perseverance rover landed on Mars and it brought a friend called Ingenuity. Ingenuity is a kind of helicopter drone-like device that's going to attempt its first flight on Sunday. We're going to hear if it worked on Monday, hopefully.
Oh, no lives? They didn't bring a camera?
No, I don't think we're going to. I think there's a download that needs to happen, a data download on Monday.
Oh.
So did they send it today? Like, did they send the directions today, or did they send it a couple days ago?
That's a good question. I don't know if it's almost automatic. From what I've gathered, a lot of what it's going through right now, it's testing the blades and everything, has been programmed out. I'm not sure how early it was programmed out, but they probably have had it, programmed for a while. Yeah, that's a good question. I need to know more about it myself. All right. Okay, so Orion is leaving our sky as more of a winter constellation. We're getting into the spring constellations like Leo. So how do we find Leo? Nicolette?
Well, you find Leo like you would any other constellation. You would try to connect the dots. I believe in our simulation, the stars are a lot brighter than what you would actually see out in the sky, especially if you're on a very well-lit campus like Ball State. The light pollution can make things a little hard to see. But if you have really good eyes, try to look for probably a very familiar shape to many of you who are either scared of or enjoy English. You'll see it in your sentences a lot. I have a lot of questions. There's the hint. You're going to be looking for a backwards question mark. I would recommend looking in the left part of the sky, but like I said, it can be a little hard because there's a lot of stars everywhere.
Backwards question mark.
Yes. So once you find the question,
I see it.
Oh, you found it? Awesome.
Yeah, I found it.
Okay. All right, so if you think you found it and you want to kind of put what direction it's over, so is it kind of more towards the west, more towards the east over here? Where is this backwards question mark? All right, so it's kind of in between south and southeast. So come up from the horizon, high in the sky, almost in the south, is the backwards question mark right here. And it should show up a little bit better in our light polluted sky here in Muncie, Indiana. It kind of pops a little bit more. It's one of the easier ones to find, but it's more than just this backwards question mark, right? The backwards question mark is just what we call an asterism, another easily recognizable group of stars that makes a picture. But the constellation Leo is more than that, right, Nicolette?
Yes, there is more to it for sure, which we will see in a moment. But the backwards question mark is just a really easy indicator A lot of times we try to use other constellations to lead us to the one that we're talking about, but Leo is kind of in an odd predicament where we can't use Orion's elbow or knees or anything like that to really help you figure out where that is. But we'll just take a small piece of the constellation for now.
Yeah. Some people say you can use another object, and we'll maybe look at that at the end of the program. But really, that backwards question mark helps you out big time.
Yeah.
Okay. So, backwards question mark, part of Leo the Lion. And there's a lot going on in this area of space because the constellations are more than just the stars that are connected with lines here. The constellation is really this large patch of sky and everything that we can see from our perspective here on Earth that lies in this area of the sky, which means things like galaxies, like these galaxies here. What do we have here?
So here we've got the Leo Triplet. It's a group of 3 relatively large spiral galaxies. So we've got M65, M66, and NGC 3628. We'll get to that one here at the end. There's something really special about that one. But M65, that's the one that's in the top right. And that was originally thought when it was first discovered to be a nebula without stars. And the reason is because technology back in the 1700s when it was discovered couldn't see those individual stars. And so to them, it just looked like what we've seen before, right? So we've looked at nebulas time and time again here. So it looks just like this kind of blob, right? You can't see those individual star points. And so it took a little bit to be able to see that. But it's a large spiral galaxy. And remember, when we talk about a spiral galaxy, we're talking about a galaxy that's got a really dense nuclear bulge, is what we call it, in the center, and then surrounded by these spiral arms. Now, in the bottom right, we've got galaxy M66. So we have 65 and 66. Well, both were discovered in the exact same night by a guy named Charles Messier, and he added them to what's called the Messier catalog. Now, this was in the late 1700s, but the catalog that he used, or that he created, is still in use today, which is pretty amazing. And so 250 years later, right, we're still using some of the same catalogs that were created. It's also a spiral galaxy, like we talked about before, but this one's got some twists. So first, this is a barred spiral, which we talked about before, where you have that bar in the center. And then it's also got kind of a wonky little structure. So one of the arms is way more tightly wound than the other. The other one is kind of hooked. And then the central bulge is off center too. And that's not entirely normal, but that's thought because, gravity's pulling on all of these different objects in space. And so it's believed that that kind of weird structure is caused by the interactions with that galaxy and the others surrounding. So then we get to the left side there, which is NGC 3628. And this one looks a lot different than what we're used to. Because we're seeing it edge on. And because of how we see it, it's got a special name. So it's called the Hamburger Galaxy. So this is a galaxy that has kind of that patty in the center, right? The hamburger patty, because we see that on the edge. And it's kind of enclosed by these dark buns, right? So that's why we call it the Hamburger Galaxy, which I think is pretty cool.
I think that's great. There's names for, there's long names with like letters and numbers, and then we usually give objects in astronomy another name that kind of is a, indicates what they look like. And so Hamburger Galaxy, sure. I don't know. I think it's a stretch. I don't see a hamburger.
They were probably just really hungry when they saw the galaxy, and they were like, yeah, a real nice hamburger would be great.
Yeah. And
you also have to wonder when you look at it through a telescope, right, you kind of have to wonder how many of the stars in the background you can see. So it might be darker if we're looking at it like through a telescope on Earth as opposed to what we see here.
Yeah, I wonder like what they actually saw when they named it the Hamburger Galaxy exactly. Like, because this image is probably not the one that they actually named it from. I don't know. There's like hamburger phones and purses and stuff, so people really like hamburgers.
I wonder if there's a pizza galaxy.
I wonder if there's a pizza galaxy. Maybe Melanie can find that out for us.
Maybe a nebula would be, because galaxies tend to be either, unless it's in a regular galaxy, somewhat spherical, elliptical, spherical.
I have had, so when we bring up all the constellation pictures in the planetarium, there's a constellation that looks like pizza. And so I've had kids come in to the planetarium and ask me if there's a pizza galaxy, or not galaxy, a pizza constellation. And I'm like, no, it's not a pizza constellation. And the teacher was like, oh, it's because the one thing looks like a pizza. And I'm like, it does. It does look like a pizza. So,
Aww.
It's so cute.
All right, there's more galaxies in Leo the Lion. So if 3 isn't enough for you, we have this picture. It's not the best picture, but there's a lot going on here, right, Caleb?
Yeah, that's right. This is what's known as the Leo cluster. This is a collection of 70 different galaxies, and it's actually part of even though it's a cluster, it's actually part of a giant supercluster known as the Coma supercluster. So, which comprises of both the Leo cluster and another cluster, which is called the Coma cluster. So you have the Coma cluster, the Leo cluster, which can together make the Coma supercluster. So this is about like 300 million light years away from us, so pretty far. And if you look near the middle, there's a fuzzy galaxy that's known as MGC 3842, and it's actually the center of mass of this cluster, and it got so large by basically eating other galaxies that came in contact with it. So
cool. Love astronomy.
Nice.
Yep. Another thing that's interesting about this cluster is that you'll notice you'll notice if you look at some images of it, you'll notice that scientists have noted that there's no stellar formation going on in these galaxies. That's because due to the interaction of these galaxies amongst each other, they basically stripped away their gas, basically keeping them from forming new stars. So there's a lot more redder galaxies than because red usually in galaxies usually determines how older. I'm correctly, right, Greg?
Yep.
Yeah, and I was just gonna remind our viewers, just basic astronomy 101. Stars are made out of gas, and so not really any gas. You can't really make any stars. So speaking of gas, though, we got this thing right here. What is this?
So this is an object. This is an interesting structure that's a part of the Leo cluster. It's a ring of gas and dust called the Leo ring. And for those of you that are regular viewers of our show, you might think, oh, hey, I remember seeing something about a ring of gas and dust, right? Well, we talked about a few weeks ago the Monoceros ring. And the Monoceros ring was caused by a galaxy getting its gas and dust stripped away as it rotates around the Milky Way, or revolves around the Milky Way. And this one, the Leo ring, didn't quite form like that, but it is the result of, as Caleb had mentioned, some of those interactions that help strip the gas and dust away from these galaxies and cause low star formation. So it's actually the result of a collision between NGC 3384 and M96. They're pretty close to the heart of the cluster. And what's really interesting about this collision is Well, there's really two things, right? So the first thing is that the amount, just the sheer amount of gas and dust is amazing. So the collision resulted in the expulsion of enough gas and dust to rival all of the gas and dust that's found in our own Milky Way galaxy, which is pretty amazing. So again, it just leads us to think, okay, if there's not a lot of gas, then yeah, we're not going to have a lot of that star formation in these galaxies. And then the other thing is that it was originally thought to be what we call primordial gas. So primordial gas is something that astronomers have looked for a long time now. And it's gas that was a direct result of the Big Bang. And it's that gas that hasn't been, kind of recirculated, right? It hasn't been turned into something else and then made back into gas. But unfortunately, computer models later on showed that it was instead the result of the collision between a few of those a couple of those galaxies in that cluster.
Yeah, because how old is our universe? About 13.8 billion years old. So that would be some really old gas. And that gas, did eventually, after it was created in the Big Bang, or as a result of the Big Bang, 13.8 billion years ago, it did eventually form stars, and those stars formed galaxies, and then stars go supernova, some of them do anyway, and they create heavier elements than the hydrogen and helium gas that makes them up. And then those elements can get put into new stars and can continue the process. But when we look at, the stars that make up Leo the Lion, a lot of them aren't as old as 13.8 billion years, about the age of our universe. They're much younger. But there is one star in this constellation that is one of the oldest stars found. It's 13 billion years old, which means it's made out of mostly gas that wasn't recirculated, like Greg was mentioning. And that means that it's mostly made out of hydrogen and helium and not too much heavier elements. And what do astronomers call elements that are heavier than hydrogen and helium, crew? Do you know? Metals, yeah. Yeah, so metals in astronomy is just anything that's heavier, an element anyway, that's heavier than hydrogen and helium. So in astronomy, metals are just heavy things, heavier than hydrogen and helium.
Astronomers just like to be lazy.
Exactly. They don't really care about anything other than hydrogen and helium. Sometimes they care about lithium. Like, lithium's pretty important to them. But yeah, like, there's a star called Caphos star in Leo the Lion, and Caphos star is 13 billion years old. It has a really low metallicity. It doesn't have a lot of metals in it. And it was discovered by Elisabetta Caphos. And she looked for 10 years to find these kind of low metallicity stars, so stars that have low amounts of metal in them. And she found it eventually and got a whole star named after her. Okay, looks like Caleb's having some issues here. Maybe he's going to join us back in just a few. But Greg and Nicolette, let's see.
Sorry about that.
Oh, you're fine. We were just getting into exoplanet talk. So exoplanet, just a reminder, is a planet going around a star outside of our solar system. All right, so exoplanets, they orbit stars outside of our own solar system. Let's see. There's a couple in Leo here, like this one here. And I think, Caleb, you're back now and ready to talk about it. Perhaps. Caleb, are you good?
All right. Can you hear me?
I can hear you pretty okay. Why don't you go ahead and try? We're talking about the exoplanet GJ436b here. And it's up on the screen here. Of course, this is not a real picture of this exoplanet in Leo the Lion. This is an artist's rendition. This is just a guess of what this object might look like and the size of it compared to Neptune and Earth here. So what's interesting about this exoplanet, Caleb? I wonder if Caleb still got some issues here. Okay, so as you can see here, this exoplanet is about the same size of Neptune, and it's orbiting really close into its host star, so it's really warm, much warmer than Neptune is. Neptune is the farthest planet in our solar system away from the sun. So can't see, it's much more warm here, and how it's hanging on to the gas that's around it, because it is a gas giant planet like Neptune is kind of a mystery still to astronomers. Because you would expect the gas to get heated by the star's light and energy and expand and get out into space and kind of dissipate over time. There's another exoplanet too. Again, this is an artist rendition. This one is K2-18b, and it's what we call a super Earth. That means it is like the Earth because it's rocky. It might have an atmosphere, but it is much, much larger than our Earth is. It's like, 2 times more massive than our Earth, I think. And Caleb is going to teach us all about these and talk to us about these, but I think there's still some issues on his end.
I'm back. I'm back. I can hear you guys just fine.
Okay, well, what do we got on K2-18b here? Besides,
this one is a little. This one is not that far away in terms of astronomical distances. This is only about 111 light years away. So while it is very far by our normal ideas of distance, it's actually not that far away in terms of the way we'll talk about the universe. So it's also what's known as a super Earth. Basically, a planet that's that's rocky in composition, but also it's also at least twice the mass of our own Earth. So it's a lot bigger. It's also it's in what's called the habitable zone of the star. As I'm sure from previous shows, we remember learning about habitable zone, and this happens to be the habitable zone of its own star, which is a red dwarf star. And red dwarf stars, habitable zone around those, are usually a lot closer to the star than our own sun's habitable zone would be. For this exoplanet is actually it's actually very close, and its orbital period is actually about 33 days, which is actually like half the time that it takes Mercury to basically circle our sun.
Yeah. I think you said that it's quite a ways away, over 1,000 light years. I see here that it might be only about 120 light years away.
Only 100.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought I said 100, but okay.
I think maybe
we said 100 too.
Okay, cool. I thought I heard 1,100, and I was like, okay, closer to than that. But anyway, like light years is really far.
Oh, I said 100. I said 111.
Got it.
What's 1 versus 100? It doesn't matter.
Yeah, like at that point,
it's too
like
far
you can't
anyway.
Yeah,
exactly.
To be honest,
like we.
how much is it? 9,000.
How large is a light year? 6 trillion miles.
9,000 miles. Yeah, sure.
6 trillion. So like it doesn't matter anyway. Exactly.
What's a factor of 10 in astronomy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna joke about that too. Like astronomers always joke about factors of 10 because it's like it's just a big number. Like it doesn't change anything.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, again, we are looking at Leo the Lion. To find Leo in your sky, look for a backwards question mark high in the south after sunset. When it gets really dark, you should be able to see it just fine. It is a spring constellation. Since we are into spring, we're going to see new constellations beyond Orion the Hunter, which we've been focusing on for quite a while now. And Leo is a part of the constellations of the zodiac, and you're going to hear a little bit more about that in just a bit. But we just explored an exoplanet called K2-18b. K2, that is the designation for the mission for Kepler once it stopped working all the way. So Kepler had some issues. It's a space telescope out in space looking for exoplanets. You might have heard of it. The Kepler Space Telescope was looking for exoplanets away from the ecliptic for a while. But then it started to not work as well. It lost power to or control of some of its reaction wheels that helped point it to different targets in the sky, different stars in the sky to explore. So they moved it to look at the ecliptic area, which just means that it looked towards the constellations of the zodiac, basically, which again Leo is a part of. So that's why we found an exoplanet in Leo using Kepler recently. Okay, so let's see. Pretty pictures, not of space, but drawn, created by people here on Earth to tell stories about the sky beyond the science. And Nicolette, you've got it from here.
All right, one of my favorite things to do, which is talk about mythology. We're going to be going back to some of our regular routine, which is talking about some Greek mythology. The past few constellations, we've been getting involved in a lot of real history, like real-time history, archaeology sort of stuff. Mythology is more of storytelling, but it is a part of our history and Greek history, which I enjoy. But before we get into that, Leo is one of the oldest constellations in the sky. And it is believed that some of the Mesopotamians had a constellation very similar to it, dating as early as 4000 BC. So it's pretty old. And this constellation pops up a lot in other cultures as well. They have different names, of course, because as we've learned studying Hindu astrology or Chinese astronomy, certain constellations have different names in different regions. But that's okay. So some of the stories that are associated with Leo the lion. Leo is not its name in its storytelling. It's known as the Nemean lion in Greek mythology. I think many have heard of this tale before. I believe Nemean is a village or a city, some sort of area where people lived back in ancient Greece. And this lion lived in a cave, and he was terrorizing the town. He was being a bully, meanie, eating all their crops, just not a good neighbor, not at all. And Hercules was doing some of his regular missions. He had, remind me, Caleb, what was it called? The 10 something?
The 10 labors of Hercules.
Thank you. 10 labors of Hercules. So this was one of his jobs, I believe, which was to take care of this lion. However, he's very special. He cannot be harmed by man-made materials. So no arrows are going to hurt him. Right? What, Dana?
The lion couldn't get harmed by those, right?
Right, the lion could not. Okay. He had very special fur, very special pelt. So Hercules obviously was going to have a really hard time. Eventually, he did take care of the lion without using man-made weapons. And I believe he either took a fang or a claw, one of the sharp objects, off of the lion so that he could take his pelt and then continue to wear it as his armor. You can see one of the pictures that is not the constellation picture on the left, the very beautiful painting on the right, that Hercules is fighting hand-to-hand combat with the lion, which I think is very impressive.
What, you don't think you could take a lion like that, Nicolette?
No, I would run away.
Continue.
No, you can barely handle a cat, okay? No. I will leave that to Hercules.
The lion on the right looks a lot more aggressive than the lions on the left.
Yeah, they look a lot more friendly.
Yeah.
Well, that's probably because they're not fighting Hercules on the left, so.
Good point, very good point. We did say that Leo was a part of the zodiac. It is actually the 5th constellation in the zodiac, so earlier in our regular calendar dates, because when we talk about astrology, Certain constellations are associated with certain times. And this one, if you were born during the time of July 22nd to August 22nd, you are a Leo.
Bringing up some constellations of the zodiac that are around Leo here. Like Cancer the Crab that we explored already in the presentation, or in the program. And then here's Leo.
So cute. Still a little threatening looking, but cute.
Yeah, he's a little threatening.
He's a little smaller. When he's the same size as the crab, it's not a big deal, right?
Maybe it's just Cancer's really big crab. Just a mega crab. You know, king crabs are huge.
I wish, yeah. Well, the crab's not that threatening. I mean, not really.
Okay, so we have this backwards question mark that we've been teaching you that you really got to find this to find Leo. But you can also look for behind that backwards question mark or off to the east here in the sky. There's kind of a rectangle group of stars and maybe a triangle out here for his tail and so on. Okay, before we move on to a constellation that's kind of over in this area, Leo the Lion's backwards question mark at the bottom of it is the star Regulus. And Nicolette, you found some interesting things about Regulus, right?
Well, Regulus is one of the brightest stars in Leo. I believe it is the brightest because it's called Alpha Leonis.
Leonis, yeah.
Leonis, thank you. So I believe we've talked about naming stars before when we talk about constellations, but of a bit of review, Alpha, the Greek letter, is associated with the brightest star in that constellation only. And they get their name, that Leonis part, is the constellation's part of it. So it's letting you know that that star is the brightest in Leo the Lion. And Beta is the second brightest, and so on and so forth with the Greek letters.
At the time of naming, because we actually found that there are some stars that are Alpha and then the constellation name, but it turns out it's not the brightest star, it's like the second brightest star. So it can get a little confusing. But typically Alpha, and then the constellation name is the brightest star in the constellation, like Alpha Leonis here or Regulus. And if you're a Harry Potter fan, you might notice that, or find the name Regulus kind of familiar, because there's a character in Harry Potter named Regulus Black, right?
I love the black family.
Yes, Regulus Black, Sirius Brother.
Sirius' brother, also one of my favorite characters.
Even though you never see him in the book,
That is true.
You just hear about him or read about him, I guess.
It does have an alternate name as well, and you could probably guess if you look at the lion picture itself for this constellation, you'll notice that Regulus is in a very particular spot, at least in this picture, which I really like. Regulus is also known as the beast's heart or the lion's heart. And again, the picture just does a really good job of placing that. I really like it. Because to me, the constellation itself without the picture looks like a mouse. But with this picture to help, it does mark the beast's heart, which I appreciate.
Yeah, Caleb mentioned while we were preparing for this show tonight that Regulus, like Regulus Black from Harry Potter, it's interesting that it's in the lion constellation and maybe not like a snake constellation for Slytherin. Because Regulus Black was in Slytherin, but then he was in Slytherin.
So it's kind of ironic that the constellation that it comes from is actually a lion. So
yeah. Okay, so Leo the Lion here has got, of course, a tail and a little tuft of hair on the tail. There's another kind of hair-themed constellation over in this region where there's not a lot of bright stars, but there's a constellation of a lock of hair, which I always thought was really weird. And it used to actually be a part of Leo at one time, this area of the sky. Right, Nicolette?
Yes. Way back in the day, a Greek astronomer named Ptolemy considered this constellation to be a part of Leo, and it was the tuft of his tail, or their take, which I thought was pretty interesting. But later on, another astronomer decided to, not astronomer, pardon me, he's a cartographer, so he makes maps, decided to make it its own constellation, and it is officially a constellation known as Coma Berenice, which has a very fascinating story. And they're based on real people, which is also really cool. I love it when that happens. So,
and it doesn't happen often in constellations, right? Like it's like the only one that's based off of a real life person, historical person, right?
Right. It's really cool. So Berenice and another man by the name of Ptolemy, they are not the same people, because there is the Greek astronomer Ptolemy, and Berenice is a queen in Egypt, and her husband, who was also named Ptolemy, was the king. And he had to go on a very dangerous mission. Or maybe it is the same Ptolemy, because if I remember correctly, the story goes that Berenice is very worried for her husband, and she prays to Aphrodite to protect him and to bring him home to her safe and sound, no wounds. She wants her husband back, because it's a very dangerous mission. And she promised Aphrodite that if she did that, she would give her locks of hair, because she had very beautiful, long, blonde hair, I believe. The story can be a little tangled because this was a long time ago, but she did have very beautiful hair, and Aphrodite is known for beauty and love, and hair is usually associated with beauty. So eventually, Ptolemy did come home, and he was safe. So, as promised, she went to Aphrodite's temple and cut off her hair and left it in the temple. And then it later disappeared. It was gone. And the king was very upset that she cut off her hair. And to appease him, they made it into an official constellation, saying that Aphrodite put it in the sky to honor Berenice's hair and her hair loss.
Yeah.
I think it was a worthy sacrifice.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, 2 Ptolemies. One Ptolemy is often heard of in astronomy because he created, or really wrote down the constellations and mapped them in literature, basically. So Claudius Ptolemy was around in about 150 AD. But then the Ptolemy that we heard about in Nicolette's story was around in about 300 BC. Yeah, and he was
I appreciate that.
Yeah, he was a companion and historian of Alexander the Great.
Okay, that makes a lot of
question.
sense.
I have a question, actually. So, like the astronomer Ptolemy, is he the same Ptolemy who came up with the Ptolemaic model?
The model
of the universe?
I think so. Yeah. He kind of was famous, I think, for that, especially in astronomy. Yeah. Yeah, in his book, and I don't remember how to pronounce this. Almagest.
I think it's pronounced the Almagest. Yeah.
Almagest. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, where he explained his model, which was a geocentric model with the Earth at the center of the solar system. And so when other people came around, was like, not quite. Earth is not quite at the center of the solar system. It's in the solar system, just not the center. That's where the sun is. Got corrected. All right.
Yep. Good old Copernicus.
Okay, so again, we were focusing on Leo the Lion. And let's go back to our view of the sky here. Leo is one of the 12 constellations of the zodiac and one of the 88 constellations that map out our sky. We're going to be exploring a lot of other constellations during the Constellation Cruise series, but we only have 2 episodes left this semester. Our semester really wraps up at the end of the month, early next month. So we have 2 more programs, one on Ursa Major and Ursa Minor, and then one to wrap up. So any constellations that you might want to know about before we end for the semester. And I don't think we're going to be having any over the summer, unfortunately, because the students all go home usually over the summer, and we don't have a lot of student assistance. But we won't be exploring constellations next week. It's going to be the week after, and the week after that are going to be our last two. All right, crew, any final thoughts here?
That I can think of.
All right. Okay, so join us not next week, but the week after to learn all about Ursa Major and Minor. And we actually found a graphic while we were doing some research on this, Nicolette did actually, that said that you can use Ursa Major to help you find Leo the Lion. Ursa Major is up pretty high in the sky, and because of that, it's kind of hard to use to find Leo, which is also up really high in the sky at this time of the year. But you might have heard that you can use Ursa Major, which is in this area here. It's the Big Dipper is a part of it. You can use it to help you find Leo. But we'll talk more about that in a couple weeks when we explore Ursa Major and Minor. But for now, take care, everyone, and have a great weekend. Thanks for tuning in.
Bye.